Hey, I'm reading and kind of crunching and trying to cram a lot of statistics regarding the USA v. City of Portland, which is the case where the Department of Justice has argued on behalf of the United States of America that the Portland police behave unconstitutionally towards American citizens who are perceived to have a mental illness. And I was last night at the meeting held by Joanne Hardesty in the Alberta Ministerial Alliance, who have an enhanced amicus status with the court regarding their pursuit of justice in the racial profiling issue. So one of the main issues that the community feels aggrieved that the Department of Justice was hesitant to argue regarding the racial profiling and racialized killings, despite these very egregious numerous incidents of Portland police killing young African men and some women and some Latino men. And I thought I would basically make like a series of 10 videos to just sort of kind of rough draft, practice out what I want to say. What I officially registered to speak about was the behavioral health unit, which I looked on the roster so far, and I'm the only citizen speaking on that. And one thing Jimmy Tardy pointed out to me when I was telling them about what I had observed about them is, oh, I don't think people know about that. This is all new, and it's a new phase. It's newly being rolled out. And what citizens have what involvement with which task force or which agency is kind of unique and interesting. But the particular behavioral health unit, as I understood it, appears to have a pattern of harassing police brutality victims after their police brutality. And the thing I was most concerned about was the fact that the BHU hasn't found a workaround for the issue of plainclothes versus police clothes, where the police officer has had a pattern of aggression, beating, brutalizing the target or the subject, and that when the BHU is then a committee of like a master's degree in psychology trying to train the police not to beat people, they're basically kind of crash coursing the police on pop psychology. And their methods, in my mind, are basically pretty barbaric because they're stalking victims who may be pursuing litigation, they may be pursuing their own healthcare options, they may be trying to have a private life, and that this targeted stalking is not separate from other instances of stalking. And when I tried to piece together the case study of the Pickering case, how was he stalked, who was stalking him, how was it occurring, after two interactions with the BHU at which I was present, I called McCormick, who was second in command, and said, please terminate these visits. They're inappropriate to the persons in our dwelling, inappropriate scheduling-wise. We've got night shifts. We've got, late-night people. Like, leave us alone. Please don't be knocking on the door. This is scary. We live in a bad neighborhood. Furthermore, we do not want police at our door nonstop because we live in a neighborhood that's famous for methamphetamine. And if any of these drug dealers interpret that we are ourselves police or are in some kind of cahoots or collusion with the police, we may face retaliation from criminals because of what we are perceived to be. And we were very polite to them and thank them for their work in the neighborhood and trying to ensure public safety. But overall, their methods were profoundly invasive, and they felt that they had the right to intrude on property without speaking to the property owner. They didn't have a search warrant. They didn't give any kind of Miranda rights reading. They weren't very specific and clear about what is their intention and their aim. And in this one occurrence, which completely caught us off guard, we had some food we were about to eat. We ended up sitting in these lawn chairs that I had purchased at the Goodwill with Dinah Brooks, who's a very nice person, and Silverman, who I liked as well. He was one of the nicest police officers I've ever met in my life. But as we're talking with him, we're going through this litany of questions. Okay, are you taking your medications? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? At which point, who are these people? Has this police brutality victim consented to be treated with police officers present? Have they signed a release and waiver that I don't mind talking about my medical history around this police officer? There's a very intrusiveness of their interaction with the public and the HIPAA violations, very clumsy. And I think one of Pickering's coping strategies for this bizarre situation where we're trying to understand this mammoth Byzantine bureaucracy surrounding the police was he said, oh, group hug. So Ben, Dinah Brooks, and Silverman and I all shared this very kind of awkward group hug. But in my book, I'd say no group hug, no touching on the job, no non-consensual. And I guess we were at that point all four consenting adults. But overall, we were not comfortable with the police on our property. And if anything, I would suggest that it was a sarcastic group hug, as this intrusive police force. And I tried to kind of pep talk Pickering into understanding, well, Dinah Brooks is trying to reform the police. The BHU may be clumsy, they may be bumbling, they may be stalkery, they may not be the worst people you ever knew, they may not know what they're doing, but they are motivated from sincere concern about compliance with the DOJ. But in terms of how that is going on with the stalking of victims, there's some unusual dynamics with that. And how, is that a court-ordered thing? Is that, to me, it's quasi-judicial, because it's Kafkaesque in the sense that they have a number of someone. They have, for instance, with Ben's case, they knew that they had brutalized him. So thereafter, they constantly harassed and surveilled him, and he felt that intrusiveness, some of whom were BHU-related people, and whether or not that was Officer Whistleblower Stuart Palmiter's reference that, oh my gosh, it appears this person has been severely beaten, has these severe disabilities, needs to have medical treatment. That was Stuart Palmiter's goodwill signing, in a de facto, signing Ben up for a treatment that he did not consent to, did not wish to have, and was not actually getting to the root of his problems. Was how could he get remunerated for his injuries? How could he get victim compensation? How could he move on with his life and meet the officers who beat him, talk to them in their face, understand his rights, have legal advice as to what his rights were under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's really dreadful to try to sum this all up because so much comes boiling to the surface. What I also wanted to talk about was the way the district attorney operates as the prosecutorial agency after the police brutality. So the police go in, maul somebody, write a fictitious report, hand it over to the DA, and then the DA prosecutes. But what I found completely interesting about absorbing this case is that my utopian vision of what a public defender would be was utterly crushed under the weight of the throwing the book at the victim of the police assault. As this occurred, the public defender denied that Ben had been beaten, denied that he was blind, denied he had reading issues tantamount to dyslexia, denied that he had severe painful headaches, that he could not navigate from street corner to street corner, being able to adequately assess all the safety risks, as well as all the street signs, as well as the largeness of a city. So as we move through that, and repeatedly, I tended to bring up the issue of police brutality of this subject, and how this prosecution for a non-existent crime, which was a crime of resisting having one's eye gouged out by the Portland police, which is one's only good seeing eye. So total vision loss, total blindness was the imminent bodily harm that he was under as he moved from this gouging of the eye. This now prosecution of him for this fictitious crime of resisting arrest or resisting being blinded by Carl Klunt in Sueta is now being prosecuted by Nitschke, who doesn't appear to have any. So then I finally eventually get into it with Gary Banfield. He admits he sounds, that sounds awful. And then I realize, well, if the district attorney has more sympathy for a police brutality victim than the client's own defender, who's in total denial of the nexus of police brutality, which her entire career is depending on fake prosecution after fake prosecution after fake prosecution, where she makes a little, you're insane, or you need to take your medicines, and that's an easy little job for her to have with these clients. But the force, she attempted to coerce him into seeing doctors who he did not want to see. She threatened him with hospitalization, which he did not want, and she refused to take an intake on the police brutality. One thing that was deeply moving to me was that when some of the Ukrainian protesters were being beaten by police, their lawyers immediately wrote, "My client has been beaten by police." Why was Ben's lawyer promoting this illusory world in which this police brutality never happens? And why were the DAs, while colluding with the police to prosecute their police brutality victim to death, to literal physical collapse, they were more willing to listen to what was really going on? Okay, I guess that's video one.